welcome to the 9th Success Mastermind that we're holding. Just a quick introduction to Jay Porter, our Senior Customer Success Manager, and then myself, Jason Connor, the Product Adoption Specialist. We've set up quite an agenda for you today. In the previous masterminds, we were kind of talking about everything, like a little bit about everything, focusing on individual topics. But today we're going to be talking about general best practices, right? So we're going to be going step by step. We're going to go from the data. Well, not really the data, because we know the importance of the quality of data and fresh data as well, but mostly like how to utilize different channels, cross them, or should I say make an intersection where you're going to be using all channels to revive leads that you previously had a conversation with. We're going to be diving a little bit about into the content, the approach in the initial messages, and so on, as well as the times, or let's say good times throughout the day when you should be sending batches. So we can expect a higher response rate, lead handoff, which we're going to be talking about the correlation between LC and CRM, as well as a push to call P2C, and go over the categories. We will talk about that, of course. And then the importance of the follow-ups will be, because we already know that the deals are in the follow-ups. Now, before we officially start, I just want to take 20 seconds to throw this out. For everybody who is struggling with data, just want to announce a partnership we've made with Deal Machine. If you don't know who they are, feel free to check them out. We are running a promo code that allows you to have 30 days free, and you can cancel at any time. And you can choose any plans that you want to choose as well to utilize. And if you like them, you can simply go on to the next month. If not, you can simply cancel. That's it I'm going to say about today. I'm not going to try to promote so much. But definitely, if you're interested, make sure to reach out to us. We will set you up with everything. Alrighty, so as the topic said, best practices, refresher topic. So the first on the agenda would be using launch control to revive dead leads, right? So not necessarily dead leads, but we can consider those people that you either established a conversation with, and then they kind of got lost in that conversation. Maybe you set up an appointment, go check out the house, but they ghosted you. Maybe you had talked to them over the phone, but they never got back to you. And just kind of those people that fell off in the qualification process, and we never got really back to them. So we did a mastermind as well on this, the cross-pollination, where the thing is, we don't want to use different channels as individual sources of, let's say, lead income, right? We don't want to use only cold calling, only SMS, only direct mail, only PPC. What we want to do is we want to intersect all of those channels and use them to our own benefit. What I mean by that is, for example, you're running PPC or you are sending direct mail. All of those leads are pretty much going to end up in the same CRM, right? So what happens is that at some point, if it doesn't go through direct mail, you're pretty much going to stop. Maybe you're going to try to follow up with them after 6 months or a year. But the thing is, you want to use all the tools that you have available at your hands in order to make the most out of the lead that you're actually marketing to. So, for example, would be you send them SMS to the person, they respond. The end goal is to get them on a phone call. We will talk about more about that a little bit later during P2C, right? After that, you may want to follow up with direct mail in case they ghosted you. Same as with the PPC. So in the CRM, you may come to find a lot of the people that you already had a conversation with, just like I mentioned, and then they got lost. What do you want to do? You want to pull all of them, put them in launch control, and re-engage with them through SMS, right? So again, the deals are in the follow-up part comes in here, where you really want to squeeze the most out of the data. It's okay. You can if you don't want to focus on that, you can simply go to PropStream or any other list source. You can purchase fresh data, you can run it through SMS, and you can engage with it. But then again, the point is, don't only rely on SMS as an engagement tool, because SMS can only get you so far. End goal, like we said, is to get them on a phone call so we can establish a further conversation, we can establish a relationship, trust, and so on and so on. Jake, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, if I may chime in, I would like to say something that I always say to my clients when it comes to reviving the dead leads. As we mentioned, The reason why we believe that texting is the way to go there, the number one way to go, is simply with asking yourself one question. Do you read every single email that you get? Probably no. Do you answer every phone call that you get? A lot of spam calls all day long. No. But do you read every text message you get? Most likely, yes. And you're not the only ones. Most people do that. So when it comes to the data that you used to have, that you use with other platforms, maybe with other forms of marketing, this doesn't have to go to waste once you switch to Launch. Or if you're already using Launch together with another platform or another marketing channel. No, use it. As Jason stated, it's always best to use everything you have at your disposal. The more, the better. For now, the most powerful combination that we have here is combining phone calls with text marketing alongside with the other ones, but these two being the primary ones. So the deals are closed most likely over the phone. That's where the conversions happen. But when it comes to the lead generation, text marketing is currently number one. Maybe it's not going to be one day, but that day is probably not going to come very soon. So do the math and let's move on with that.
I agree. And based on what Jay just said, we can compare response rate versus open rate. Open rate for SMS is above 90%. It's all the way to 98, 99%, just like Jay said. They read the message. They will read the message, whether they unlock the phone or just click on the notifications and are like, okay, I don't want to respond to them. They will still read it. Whereas if they just call you, you see the number, having no idea what the intentions behind the phone call are. So definitely take advantage. Like SMS is not gonna, it's SMS, few slots empty, and then all the other channels. But at the end of the day, first 3 spots take if you use SMS along with those channels instead of separated from those channels.
That's right. Integration is everything.
True. Amen to that. Preach it, Jay. Next thing. So now that we've covered pretty much, okay, of course, quality data, but also using the data that you already have, right? You paid for it, just like follow-up campaigns. Non-responders, we want to use them to its fullest potential because, again, we want to follow up with them. We want to nurture them. Now, in order to initially engage with them, we have to have a proper approach, right? Now, again, I just want everybody on this call, I want you guys to take this as a suggestion. This is nothing that is mandatory or we are telling you to do, but we've tested it out across with multiple customers, well, to say tested it out, and it's definitely bringing results. So when it comes to the approach, one thing I want to mention immediately is what I like to call the bait approach. I'm sure that maybe even some of you are using it, and I'm not pointing any fingers. It's perfectly fine. Using the bait approach where in the initial message, you simply just state like, hey, first name, did I reach the right number? Or hey, first name, how are you doing today? Or hey, first name, did I reach the owner of property address? Now, before I say anything, I understand the logic. The logic is you're going to get a lot of people opting in. So response rate is going to be huge, right? But high response rate does not mean quality, does not equal quality leads. What I mean by that is if you bait them into opting into your inbox and they just respond with yes out of courtesy, if you ask them how they are, they don't really know who you are, but out of courtesy, they're going to respond with yes. So you can take advantage of the inbox messages that are not counting against your data limit, which is perfectly fine. But here's what's going to happen. They're gonna know that they're actually being manipulated, right? And they're just been baited for a higher purpose, which means that after they respond, and if you tell them, and if you finally in the quick reply after their message that you used for them to opt in, if you state your intentions 99.9% of the time, you're going to end up getting ghosted because they're going to realize what you're doing. So again, I understand the logic. It's a good idea, but it doesn't work. High response rate is not quality leads. Although I know that the number is very appealing, especially when you see the response rate in yellow on your templates, it's amazing. But again, we want to work with leads that are convertible, not have a pipeline filled with leads that are simply answering to how their day was, but we're not actually accomplishing anything, right? So with that being said, in the messages, or should I say in the initial message, The three elements that you should be having are your name, the prospect's name, and the reason why you're texting it. It's not even necessary for you to mention your company name, right? And if you want to, again, as we usually advise, better to keep it abbreviated. And then once you establish a conversation, once you establish some type of trust with that specific lead, then you can share who you are, who do you work with, what is your website, and so on and so on. Doing it prematurely or too early is just going to get them to go into your website, maybe report you for no reason, even though you haven't done anything wrong, right? So in those terms, you can use the company name, but I would rather stick with the three elements. It's to personalize. And although I understand that within the 160 characters, it's really kind of hard to keep it as personalized because you are limited to 160 characters, not necessarily limited, but if you don't want double counting against your daily limit, you're going to keep it within 160, right? But you just, again, you are using an initial text to opt in, but you don't want to bait it, right? So, hey, Jade, this is Jason, or I can just put Jason at the end of the message. And actually, to be honest, well, never mind. And then stating intention, just working on my new wholesaling project in the area. I checked out your property address. It looks lovely. Would you be up for a chat, right? Or an SMS or something like that, right? So we want to state intentions and then allow them to choose whether they're going to respond or not. 9% response rate can sometimes bring you better leads than a 25% response rate will. But those are the ones that we want to. The whole real estate, if I can put a real estate in a nutshell, I would say it's finding a needle in a haystack. Out of 10,000 messages that you send, you're looking for that one yes that is going to pay off all those 10,000 messages that you just sent. All the data that you paid for, skip tracing that you've done, the SMS service that you're using, the other channels that you're using as well, everything comes with a price. But with that one deal, with that one specific yes that ends up pulling through, a couple of weeks later, you're going to pay off everything and have some change left, right?
If I may take a second, Jason, sorry to interrupt you here. So the first problem that you're creating for your own team is overburdening whoever is working on your account with excessive messages that they otherwise wouldn't have to deal with, that are either way going to end up ignoring you or blocking you or opting out, or the worst case scenario, reporting you. We don't want to do that. I know that a high response rate is very attractive. It is. I love seeing it in the accounts, but the quality matters too, not the quantity only. The second thing, after all, you're texting with human beings, right? You're texting with people. You're not texting robots. You're not texting I don't know what. So my strategy is always put yourself in the other person's shoes. As Jason already mentioned, if someone is feeling that they are being manipulated, it's less likely they are ever going to want to do anything with you. Not only respond to this text or keep responding after they learn what you're after, but
Even if they're motivated.
Yeah, sorry.
Even if they're motivated.
Yeah, even if they are, you're gonna seem suspicious. That's the trust barrier right there. We want to avoid that because you're not doing anything wrong, right? We are here to help you. You're here to help them help you, right? By purchasing the property, there is mutual help all along. So they need to actually see that you're trying to help them, show them that. And how are you going to show it? Well, not by baiting them into responding to you, because let's face it, we're all getting spam texts pretty much every week. I'm not going to say every day, but a few times every week. And sometimes we're just sick and tired of that. So what do? We just move the spammers out of our way. Don't present yourself as a spammer. That's the honest advice I can give you here. So hopefully you're going to take it, and that's going to result in more leads and therefore more deals.
True. I 100% agree. And on top of that, everybody is familiar with ChatGPT. Probably out of 64 people that have joined, probably 65 people have used ChatGPT by now, or any type of AI that helps you accomplish what you want to accomplish. But you can definitely use it to ask certain questions. Now, if we were to dive deep into what kind of approach you should be having, it's you want to some people go as far as personalizing per neighborhoods, right? So depending on the area is, so what I mean by using ChatGPT, you can literally ask ChatGPT, what would only a local know? And then based on the answers, you can use that as a reference in your messages. So there, even if you are in, let's say, Florida marketing in California, using their own language, if you're representing yourself as a local investor, is going to make they're not going to be able to see the difference if you're speaking their language. I mean, it's still English, but everybody has their own slurs. For example, howdy. Not everybody says howdy in the US as their form of saying hello. Somebody says hi, somebody says greetings. So you want to adapt to the area that you are marketing in order to provide the most results. And on top of that, since the content, since we always preach how important it is to refresh the content frequently, you can also use ChatGPT to do that as well. It used to be hours and hours and hours and trying to come up with different variations, Googling synonyms and different phrases that you can use in the same context. And now it's 30 seconds away by telling ChatGPT, let's say you get one of the templates from our copywriting team with 5 messages, everything is set up, copy paste it, put it into ChatGPT, prompt it not to use negative keywords that are mentioned in the template builder, and tell it to create 50 variations. And within 30 seconds, you have 50 variations that you can use in the next year, right? Now, the important thing is, is that if you have a set that is enough, a set of templates that is enough only to cover your data limit, and to kind of bring this closer is, if you're on a light plan with 600 messages, you need 2 templates. 2 templates are equal to 1 set that is enough to cover the data limit. We suggest tweaking it bi-weekly, right? So no need to create new templates, but with ChatGPT now it's easier than ever. You can simply click on the 3 dots, edit, adjust it, tweak it, use similar phrases, move the text spinner, instead of hi, hey, hello, remove it with howdy, greetings, how you doing, or something like that, right? And that's going to help you with the consistent high deliverability rate, right? And of course, with the high deliverability rate, the better the chances that we're going to have a high response rate as well.
Not only that, sorry to add one more thing. The quality of the content you're adding there, to an extent, determines how successful you're going to be. The point is not just to create a text that is acceptable by the system and send it. No, it's to create something that the other party would feel like responding to, So when you create something that someone else would reply to, doesn't matter if it's a yes or a no. Actually, no's tend to be even more profitable than yeses in the long run. But dedicate some more time to content creation if you're doing it yourself. Yeah, of course, as Jason mentioned, our copywriters are always here to help. But if you're doing it yourself, trust me, dedicating 30 minutes more to that is going to be worth it. It's always better to spend more time creating something that's going to result in much better response rates and conversion later on than to just have something created so you can send it out. Think about it, and you're going to see that it's going to be more worthwhile doing it that way.
Correct. And also inbox messages. Like, we don't want to focus on personalizing initial messages and then send generic responses in the inbox, right? Just with the logic of using the bait approach, so you can take advantage of the inbox messages where you can write pretty much whatever you want. We do not advise you to write whatever you want. Keep it within the real estate, of course. But you can get creative in all sorts of ways, definitely. Not as creative as some prospects when they send you a couple of pictures, but you get what I mean, right? We've all seen those. Some of us more than others, unfortunately. And by some of us, I'm talking about me. Trauma right there. But yes, definitely, you want to take advantage, right? If they ask you, like, who is this, you don't want to provide the most generic possible response of saying, hey, I'm Jason, I work with launch control and I'm interested in your property, right? In that case, that's a phone call, right? We're going to talk about why it's a phone call a little bit later, definitely. But still, you want to keep it as personalized as personalized as possible, not in one message, but in all of your messages. And just like Jade said earlier, you want to treat them as a human. Now, when you see 20,000 names on the list and a bunch of people in your pipeline, it's a bit hard to keep it on one-on-one. It's a little bit hard to put yourself in every single one of those people's shoes. But still, we want to try that as much as possible. We want to nurture those leads. We want to have a conversation with them. We want to represent ourselves as ourselves. We don't want to give them the impression that you are a money recycling machine that only cares about pulling money out of their pocket so they sell or whatever it may happen, but you definitely don't want to do that, right? You want to represent yourself as a local investor who wants to help, because at the end of the day, a lot of investors and a lot of influencers say, you're not buying properties, you're buying problems. You're buying problems that those people have with those properties, right? Whether it's money worries, regardless of which kind of problems it is, you want to represent yourself as somebody who wants to help them and is willing to step in, get done with it as soon as possible in a timely manner, with trust, with respect, and with everything else that comes with it. It's not just, okay, I sent an SMS, I got a yes, I'm going to close the deal. There are a bunch of steps in between, and each one of them has to be accomplished in order to get to the last step. It may sound easy, but it's not that easy, right? It's not one of those things like those online gurus nowadays where they tell you, hey, you want a $10,000 in the next 30 seconds, do exactly what I did, right? But it actually takes you like a year to learn about everything that he did and then actually start implementing it where it will get you $10,000 in 30 seconds. This is not a plug and play thing. Definitely. There has to be certain research behind what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know where you're marketing. You should know the area. You should personalize the approach. You should know your data. You should know exactly what you're looking for. You shouldn't be all over the place. You should have a primary plan and a backup plan. That's it. A and B. If the A, okay, I wanted to use a reference, but then I don't want to be cursing definitely. But if A doesn't work, B is there to help out. If B doesn't work, then we're going to start thinking about the C. What I mean by that is wholesaling. Okay, you're focusing on pre-foreclosure. Focus on pre-foreclosure. It doesn't work in 2 months, change it, test it out, trial and error, right? Market doesn't work. It's not producing any leads, not enough for you that is worth for you to continue investing in. Switch to a different market. If you watch one of our masterminds that we've done with Callum Faulkner, our queen of land buyers, what she does, it takes her 2 to 4 months to test out a market. If it's worth investing in, they're going to stay in the market. If not, they're just going to continue on to the next one. But staying in one market for the whole time, for your whole real estate career, is also not good. Why? Because at a certain point, you're going to be like, well, I messaged every single one of these properties. I have texted every single person. I've texted them twice, right? But at a certain moment, you will get to that point where you're going to be like, what do I do now? Right? There's not many people. And plus, even if there are, the system that will not allow me to re-engage with the same prospects I engaged with in the first place, because we don't allow abusing the system, spamming, or reaching the same number multiple times. What then? Right. So we want to expand. We don't want to stand. We don't want to, in a way, which is not, again, a bad thing, tapping in one place, but that means exhausting the market and still continuing still trying to look for opportunities. There are opportunities, but the number is going to get lower and lower and lower as the time goes. So you want to switch to different markets. You want to expand. You want to expand your interest, right? You want to start marketing to different leads.
Jay, we have 2 questions from Tony and Ahab, just to answer them real quickly. So, Tony, to answer your question, is there a way to have the copywriters review your templates? Not really, but they can create templates for you from scratch. So, by respecting all the rules that have to be respected in order to be compliant. So, no worries about it there. They can create the whole new set of templates for you if you place the order. And Ahab asked, where can we get a copy of the template builder? There's not actually a template builder, but we do have one integrated in our platform. So if you attend an onboarding, if you haven't already, you're going to go over the entire process of template creation with all the details you need to have in mind when creating a template. There is, for example, this is probably the most important one, a list of negative keywords that you're not allowed to use because they're going to trigger spam later. Plus, there are a few more requirements that you need to meet in order to, yeah, there we go. Jason's going to share it. In order to be able to save the template in the first place. Pay attention to the negative keywords list. Those are the ones that are most frequently appearing in the text marketing for real estate investors. For this reason, whenever the algorithms on the carriers end, of course, identify them in your text, either them or the workarounds. I mean, it doesn't really help you much to use a $ instead of an S or a 0 instead of an O. Once it gets detected, the message is going to get flagged as spam, and that can affect your delivery rates and later on your batches in total. So just try to stick to this set of rules that you have here. Stay away from the negative keywords. And for since this is not the topic here, but I still want to help you with that. For more detailed explanation on how to properly create a template, I strongly recommend attending an onboarding call because it's super helpful, not only with this, but with all the other features and functionalities. So take my advice and see you in the onboarding, hopefully.
And Princess May with the question, does LC scrub DNC numbers? Yes, those numbers that have been DNC'd on the global DNC list, or should I say across the whole launch control user base, it will recognize the DNC, correct. What causes low deliverability rates from Jarvis? And when uploading our data, if we have 10 numbers, meaning the actual homeowner, the relatives, and associates, we upload all of those numbers. The system allows you to upload the first 3 numbers. And in the first 3 numbers, 98% of the time, the first number is the correct number. And then the second and the third number is usually, let's say, either a relative, either a neighbor, or a completely unknown person. Yes, there is a 0.01% chance that maybe the 5th or even the 10th number ended up the correct number, but that's just because of because the providers haven't updated that number as the current primary number of the resident that you are trying to reach. Hope we answered those questions. All right, by the way, just to mention, guys, we will be having a Q&A at the end as well, so we're going to try to answer as many questions along the way, but we will be having the Q&A as well. Alrighty, now to continue. So we went through the data as our first step, reviving dead leads. So now we have people that we can text, right? We talked about the content, what kind of approach you have. Now we're coming to a point, when do we send these messages? Let me stop sharing my screen for a second. When do we actually start sending these messages? So there are actually 2 ways of how we can go about this. 2 ways because one can work for both people who are dealing with a lower volume and a larger volume, and then the second option would be mostly for people that are dealing with a larger volume if it's more convenient. So the first one would be targeting peak hours, and the second one would be what I like to call batch break. Targeting peak hours, I mean, as the name, as pretty much the name says, we're going to be targeting people at their highest availability, or when we can actually expect for that prospect to respond. Now, we've done research, and there are a lot of different sources of information. Some of them say it's going to be the best response rate is going to be between 6 and 8 a.m. Some say it's going to be at noon and so on. But what we've seen so far that is working, and again, it's all about trial and error, test it out, see if it's working. If it's not, adjust and do it again, right? This is not like set in stone. It's not a written rule, because you can't really decide when you're going to get a response rate, because it depends on the whole area where you're in. But those 3 peak hours usually are in the morning. So between 8 and 10 a.m., somewhere like that, right? Because they start at 9 a.m., at 8 a.m., they're waking up, they're drinking coffee, taking a shower, whatever they may be doing. They're on social media responding to text. Next peak hour would be noon, right? Lunchtime between 12 and 2 p.m. And then, in my personal opinion, so this is a subjective opinion, the highest response rate, or should I say realistically when we can expect the highest response rate, is after 4:30 p.m. Why? Majority of the leads that you're reaching out to are people who are working, who have a standard regular daily 9 to 5. right? They don't really care about inquiries outside of their 9 to 5 during their 9 to 5. So once they clock off, they're like, oh, thank you, freedom. Let me go home. Let me drive. Let me do whatever I want. Let me call somebody. Let me text people. Let me check social media. Let me post something. So they're going to be on their phone almost instantly as soon as they clock off, right? Because I mean, it's not good if they use their phone during their 9 to 5. I'm speaking from experience. No, I'm just kidding, of course. But you get what I'm trying to say. So after 4:30, when you're really pushing them, when the rest of the day is actually free, instead of only having an hour off during lunchtime, you have after 5 p.m. you have hours ahead. Let's say until during the active hours that close pretty much at 9 p.m. and then the blackout hours start. You don't necessarily have to send batches at 8 p.m. or something like that, but and you want to leave the largest concentration at that specific moment when you know you're going to be provided with the highest response rate. For example, if you have 10 batches that you can send throughout the day, my opinion, 3 in the morning, 3 at noon, and then 4 in the afternoon, or right after 4:35 p.m. when people start clocking off. So again, it really depends. In those terms, if you wanna leave the largest concentration of batches for after 4 or 5 p.m., I would suggest you send batches until 6:30 latest, right? We don't want to overwhelm them. Plus, if you text them at 8 and the message comes in at 10 p.m., there's nobody on launch control that is actually going to be able to see that message. I mean, messages coming in at 10, 11, 12 a.m., 1 a.m. at night are inevitable. It's always going to happen, and nothing we can do about it until the next morning. But again, we don't want to send batches way too late because of those people that will respond immediately. On the other hand, the batch break for people that are dealing with a larger volume, and the reason why this is better option, might be a better option for them, is because if they were to target peak hours and they can send 40 batches per day, that would mean 10 now, 10 at noon, and then another 20, let's say after 4:30. That's going to be a lot of volume. Batch break would mean send a couple of batches, give yourself 30 minutes to an hour, respond to all incoming messages, give them a proper status, put them on a drip automation, push the CRM who needs to be pushed, get them on a phone call, do whatever you need to do. Keep your inbox organized. And then another couple of batches, another 30 to 1 hour pause. Work on the leads, couple batches, pause, couple batches, pause. In between those pauses, you get more than enough time not to get overwhelmed by the amount of responses that are going to be coming in. Now, of course, after the third, let's say, cycle of you sending batches, there are going to be some messages coming from the first cycle of the batches that you've sent, but it's not going to be nearly as much as it would be if you were to send 10 batches back to back. Here's what's going to happen if you do that. So you send 10 batches. So if we were to expect, let's say, out of each batch, you get an average of 90% delivery and around 10 to 15% response rate. So in a batch of 150, you can expect anywhere between 10 and 20 responses. Multiply that by 10, that's between 100 and 200, which is not a big deal when you look at it like from a perspective, it's just a number, and I've texted 1,000 leads. But what's going to happen is you're going to have 100 if 200 wanted to respond, at least 60 of them will respond within a couple of minutes. First 5 are going to get a response in time, and then the rest are going to get a response after 15 minutes, after half an hour, after 2 hours, or as long as it takes, right? Lead waiting for too long is a lead lost, right? We want to catch them while they're still holding in their hand. And so then we can decide which move we want to make. Are we going to continue texting them, or are we immediately going to try to get them on a phone call so we can catch them off guard and actually have a conversation with them? So it really depends. You can choose whatever works for you. Those times, peak hours that I just mentioned, again, are not set in stone. I'm gonna repeat again: trial and error. Test it out. Send messages. keep track of what kind of when you are getting responses and what kind of responses you're getting, which at the end of the day leads us to making data-driven decisions, which are not only which are not only batch related and when you send them, but is overall related. Keeping track of the KPIs, keeping track of the stats, what's coming in, what's coming out, how many DNCs, how many wrong numbers, how many positive responses versus negative responses you're having, how many phone numbers versus landlines you have in the list. All of those little things can be a very subtle indicator that something is off. We should change it, but we have to keep track of it. If we just rely on our eyes and thinking, I'm gonna see where the problem is, you're not. Unless you are doing the math in the back end, you're not going to be able to make data-driven decisions, which is at the end of the day, the only way that we can actually progress. Jake?
I didn't want to interrupt you. You were so passionate into all of this. That was awesome. Yeah, there is something I did want to add, and it applied to some of you more than to the others, but the best response time of the day might vary depending on the age group you're targeting. Not every single age group will respond best at the same time. So if some of you are targeting, I don't know, only the elderly population, keep that in mind. You don't really need to text them later at night, or not even at, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night. That's a little bit too late for most of them. But again, as Jason mentioned, nothing stops you, not even the numbers we gave you, nothing stops you from experimenting yourselves and seeing what works best for your lists, for your target audience. Because what works for me doesn't have to work for you. What works for one of you doesn't have to work for another one. So test it out, see what works best. And this doesn't really apply only on the best response time, but also on the approach that we mentioned earlier. We didn't mention this point when we talked about the approach, but for some audience, one approach in the templates could make better results than a totally different one, right? Sometimes if you're more formal, if you're targeting more people of that kind, it's going to give you better results. It's more likely that it's going to be if you're not too formal, but still kind of nice, which applies to each and every template you need to create, but test it out. Just like we said, it's trial and error. We're all here to learn. You're just using the software. You need to find out what's working best. We're going to help you do that, of course, but test it out. See what's best for your business, for the strategy you're employing. And once you find out what that is, stick to that. Stick to that. Keep your mind open to other possibilities, but stick to something that works. Because let's face it, the key goal of all of us here is to get some great results. So the best way to do it is to find a strategy that works. That's all I wanted to add. You can continue.
I'm gonna end this with some words of absolute wisdom, right? I'm gonna become Yoda for a second. Stop looking through the keyhole before you even found out whether the door is locked or unlocked, right? So if we look at it like this, we're only going to see that. But if, like Jay said, if we keep our minds open, we're going to be able ourselves to identify areas for improvement and see what is actually working and what is not, and making the decisions moving forward to optimize it into our own benefit. But let's jump on to the next thing. So we're a little bit behind, so we're going to have to kind of put these next two segments in a nutshell. So the lead handoff, right? So this is extremely important. This is mostly, extremely important mostly for users that have established teams. Of course, there are some investors that are one-man army doing SMS. They don't even have a CRM. They do the calling themselves. So it's pretty much like the most basic things when starting off in real estate. Maybe it's your very first time in real estate. Maybe it's your very first time in SMS. You want to get it going yourself so you can then learn it and then transition that knowledge onto somebody else so you can become hands-off. But lead handoff, mostly what I'm talking about are people that are working on launch control, virtual assistants, VAs, and people who are working on the CRM or acquisition specialists who are usually mostly in charge of calling leads. Now, whether they're focusing on their own cold calling campaign or are reaching out to leads that are coming from different channels, including SMS launch control, doesn't really matter. But the relationship and the correlation between the two has to be on point at all times. So P2C, push to call, I mentioned this earlier, right? What does that mean? That means, well, push to call, right? It says in the name right there. But let's go over the categories. So the categories are different types of responses. So we have positive responses, we have neutral responses, and we have the soft no's. So here's the thing. The positive responses are anybody that says, yeah, what's your offer? Sure, call me, right? So in those cases, if they respond with a very brief, precise, and a short answer, you don't want to continue texting them. Why? The more questions you ask, the more chances you're going to end up getting ghosted. Second reason, you don't have control over the conversation, which means they can keep copy pasting their question because they don't care about answering your question. You don't have control over their response time, meaning they can respond within 2 seconds, 2 minutes, 2 hours, or not at all. But by catching them off guard and calling them within 5 to 10 minutes, a window of opportunity, that in those 10 minutes, we have yes as a response from the prospect, immediately pushing that lead to the CRM, having the acquisition specialist call them. Why we want to call them within a few minutes is because if they responded, that means they're keeping their phone in their hands. So it is very likely that once we call them, even if it's an unknown number, unrelated to the number that you send an SMS through, it's still a much higher chance that they're going to pick up. On top of that, 2 calls back to back, plus a voicemail, plus going back to launch control and letting them know that you've actually tried to call them. This goes for all categories. Whenever you call somebody, you want to make sure to go back to launch control and let them know that you've tried to call them from a personal number, office number, business number, or whatever it may be, right? Because if they don't pick up, most likely they got confused. One person texting me, another person calling me. I have no idea, but you want to call them. They don't pick up, call them again. Leave a voicemail, go back to launch control, and let them know that you try to call them from a different number and that you would like to have a conversation, including drip automations and those sequences as well. The neutral responses are those that neither give you a no or a yes. Who's this? How did you get my number? Now, here's what's going to happen. Most of you are going to send a quick reply with the most generic, that's the most generic response. Just like we mentioned in the beginning. Hi, I'm Jason. I work with launch control. I want to buy your property. No, definitely not. Right. After that, maybe you get a response. Maybe you don't get a response. Right. First, what we want to do, the first step, when somebody says, who's this? Again, we want to call them. Why? We want to allow ourselves to introduce ourselves in a proper way. We want them to hear our voice. We want them to not look at us as a boogeyman, right? We want to talk in a way that is going to appeal them to have a conversation with you and actually want to do business with you, right? If you just say, I'm Jason, they have no idea who I am. But if they hear me, and this is another comparison, and you guys can answer this to me if you want to. Who will the prospect remember rather? The person who followed up 5 times via SMS or the person who had one conversation over a phone call with a prospect? I'm gonna tell you, it's the person that actually had a conversation over the phone call, right? And I'm assuming everybody would agree. Exactly. Magic, right? But serious, those are the reasons we want to establish. It's all about establishing a relationship. So this is the part, put yourself in their shoes. It's a human being across the number that you are texting, right? It's not a person, it's not an AI, it's not ChatGPT, it's not somebody, it's not a cat or a dog or anything like that, although they are getting advanced nowadays too, but it's another human being that has a conversation with you. So you want to return it that way. For him, for that prospect, you're a person calling him. For you, that's like another name from the list, but it should be the other way around. I mean, it should be the same. it should be a human being that you're reaching out to, because it's a person you're talking to. It has the same problems as you do. It has emotions. It has everything that you have. But it's a little bit hard to keep it when you have 50,000 people in your pipeline. I get it, but try to do it as much as you can.
One thing to add to that, to what Jason just said, let's face it, we're all human, of course, and hopefully, but that being said, we like feeling special. Some of us may admit it, some may not, but we all do like feeling special. And if you do that, if you make someone feel special and not feel like another person in a random list, that's already a step up. That's already a step before your competitors, who probably don't really think this that much through. Make them feel special. Make them feel that you reached out to them for them, not only to take advantage of them or take the property, buy the property, whatever you want to call it, but everyone likes to be respected, appreciated, dedicated time to. So pretty much everything you would like someone to do with you, do with them. And by the way, Jason, we do have 2 more questions. Would you mind?
Yeah, I'm thinking we should just wrap it up first with the last segment, and then we'll dive into the Q&A. I read the questions already. Yeah, no worries. Alrighty. Next thing is, so let's go from the top. We got the data, whether it's coming from you paid for the data, fresh data, or you're taking the data that you already have from different channels. We talked about the approach, so we can follow up with these people, right? We can engage with them, we can follow up with them. Next, we determine, now that we have all that, when do we actually text them, right? And now that we've texted them and they opted in, and some of them ended up being motivated, what do we do next? Oh yeah, actually, I forgot one more thing. The third category in the P2C, we went positive, neutral, and the soft no's. Soft no, the simplest explanation would be, not interested is a drip automation. No, not now is a yes, just not now. We again want to call them. First, we want to allow them to justify why not now. And if they give you a legit answer, that's okay. Never close that window, right? Never close the door. You always want to end it on a good note. If they don't want to sell now, they don't want to sell now. We put them on a drip. That's easy, not a problem. The worst case scenario, we walk out of that call with an estimate of when they're going to sell. If they say I'm going to sell in 6 months, you're not going to put them on a drip. You're going to set up a reminder in 3 months and then another one in 6 months. You're going to have 2 touch points over a phone call, preferably, instead of an SMS, right? But it's still, somebody's asking for too much money. It's on Zillow, it's 250. They're asking for 400. That's a great start. Why 400? Right? As I usually like to say, like, if you're asking for double the money, is that property going to cook me breakfast, lunch, and dinner every time I wake up? Like, well, is it made out of gold or something like that? What's going to happen is, if somebody's asking for too much money, but they want to sell, they're never going to sell. Not a single investor would want to buy that property for that much money. After a course of a couple of months, what's going to happen? The price is going to start dropping. Because again, if the prospect wants to sell and is keeping a high price, they're not going to sell. The next step is to decrease the price. If it's by 50K, it's by 50K. Still nobody's going to buy. It's going to drop by another 50K. Nobody's going to buy. It's going to be a couple of months before you follow up with them and are like, hey, what's the situation? They're like, hey, I'm looking for this much money. And you're like, perfect, bingo. I waited for 6 months, but I got 20K out of it. Multiply that with 10 people, the deals are in the follow-ups, right? All roads lead to the deals are in the follow-ups.
One thing about that, this is important. So we already learned, right, that we need to call them when they give us a yes, a maybe, or a not yet. I want to stick to not yes just for another minute. When you give them a call, if there is a trend of declining prices, which is ongoing pretty much from time to time, that's regularly happening. The part of the value you're going to provide them with on this call is the education on the market conditions. So imagine if someone is not selling because they are hoping to get more money, I don't know, 6 months from now. You're offering them a great value by telling them that the money they're able to get now is much higher than something that they're going to be able to get a half a year or a year from now. So if this is a reason, and if this is the situation, your prospects are greatly going to appreciate your advice. So think about that next time you do this kind of goal.
Now, preaching about the follow-up, the two most amazing features that we have are direct automations and follow-up campaigns. Follow-up campaigns, simple, it's for non-responders. Anybody who didn't respond to your initial campaign, they're going to show up in the follow-up campaigns 30 days later. You can follow up 3 more times, right? It's more than enough. If they don't respond, they don't respond. You can export them. You can continue following up via call, via phone calls, cold calling, right? You can send them a direct mail. Again, using multiple channels to engage with leads that previously fell off in the process, right? Now, again, importance of follow-up, it's pretty clear. I want to make one very, very, very important distinction, and I feel like this is one of the negative keywords in launch control, and that is text blast, right? Guys, let me tell you right now, if you're text blasting, you're not making results. I promise you. You are the basic definition of finding a needle in a haystack, just waiting for that one yes. You're not text blasting. You are marketing to your leads. You are engaging with your prospects. You are nurturing your prospects, right? It all comes down. Somebody said no today. In 2 months, they may say yes. Why? Because they changed their mind. Another why? Because their life made them sell the property even if they wanted to, right? Life brings you in a certain situation where you end up having to sell your car and you don't want to sell the car. You love that car, but you have to. Same as with the property, right? You don't want to sell the property, but you come into a situation where you don't really have a choice, right? So in those cases, and although I hate saying that, that's a terrible example, but still, at the end of the day, it's still business. And you represent yourself as somebody that you are a helping hand, right? Sure, you get benefit out of it, but you are a helping hand. You get benefit out of it, but somebody else gets it too. Except you want to emphasize their benefit rather than your benefit by just offering a helping hand and being there for them, right? Now, for this specific, I just want to go over 2 drips. Those for people that are not interested, and for everybody currently using launch control. Another important, just kind of disclaimer: the not interested status, guys. The not interested status is not for people that are not interested, for prospects that are not interested. No. Though the not interested status are for prospects that you are not interested in, right? Ridiculous pictures, ridiculous responses, completely unrelated, or whatever it may be. If you're a land buyer, wetlands, no road access, no well, no nothing, it's like you are not interested in that property. If somebody says they're not interested, you put them on a drip automation because a no can turn into a yes. But if you're not interested, in that case, you want to disposition them under the not interested status. If you have 10,000 prospects in your inbox, you should have no more than 1,500 to 2,000 people under not interested. No more than that. So, advice: go to your inbox, check mark the not interested status, and everybody that said no, you can put them on a drip automation. Again, people that say no, not interested, never, I'm never selling, and so on and so on. As long as they don't request to opt out and become a DNC, you can follow up with them every 30 days. That's the long-term drip automation. Now, the short-term drip automation, which I'm going to connect with the push to call, is that drip automation where somebody shows motivation, you engage in a conversation, they go MIA, right? In the middle, they ghost you, they don't give you notice, they don't call you back, they don't send a message, nothing. They just, the ground swallowed it, right? They disappear. So what do we want to do, right? So first, connecting with P2C. Somebody shows motivation. You call them. They don't pick up. You leave a voicemail. Actually call them again and then leave a voicemail. You go back to launch control, letting them know that you've tried to reach out to them via phone call, via a personal number. And if they don't respond, you can put them on a drip automation, right? Now, the drip automation is set on day 1, 3, 6, 11, and 19, which means that the first message goes out tomorrow, and then 2 days later, and then 3 days later, and then 5 days later. Again, going back to the roots of the mastermind, don't rely only on the SMS. You have a drip automation running, call them along with the SMS going out. Whether you're going to call them every day once, or you're going to follow the drip automation sequence to tomorrow and then 2 days and then 3 days and then 5 days, it doesn't matter. The end goal still is to get them on a phone call. If they respond to SMS, you're going to have to call them. But if you call them and send them a message and they could pick up the phone, it's a win-win situation, right? You are maximizing your time, and you are not allowing yourself to create any loose ends or create any time gaps where you're not really doing anything, but you can fill that with something productive that is gonna end up in your own benefit, right? So it's those short-term versus long-term. And also, I want to touch on this. We talked about the content approach in the initial messages as the second segment in this topic. Now, and this is gonna be, we're gonna wrap this up and then we're gonna switch to Q&A. When it comes to follow-up messages, here's the problem that I see with a lot of people. They build their follow-up messages in an identical way that they build initial messages. The initial messages says, hey, first name, I want to buy your property. And then the follow-up message 30 days later also sounds, hey, first name, I want to buy your property. No. You have to keep in mind that all of those messages are going out through the same number, or should I say for one prospect. Initial message goes through one number. If they don't respond 30 days later, the follow-up message goes through the same number. Drip automations go through the same number. Texting back and forth, quick replies, all of it with that specific prospect goes through the same number. So if you try to send 2 initial messages through the same number, it's not going to look good. The whole sequence of the message when they open their chat is going to look ridiculous. Hey, first name, hey, first name, hey, first name. I want to buy a property. I want to buy a property. No. It should be, hey, first name, I want to buy your property. Second message, hey, first name, following up in regards to what I said, let's say what I asked you 30 days. Let me know if anything changes. You want to show them your follow-up efforts. You try to engage with them. Why are you trying to engage with them again where you should re-engage with them? Right? So it's same with the drip automation messages. You want to let them know that you are trying. Every 30 days, it's going to be like you, hey, I'm here. I'm still interested. I'm not going anywhere. And then they forget about you. And then 30 days, nope, you're not forgetting about me. I'm still here. And then 30 days again, I'm going to knock, knock. Who's there? Still me. I'm still interested in your property, right? So it's going to continue, and it's going to continue either until they become a DNC, which is rarely what happens if you only hit them every 30 days, unless you're spamming them every couple of days, or they're going to say yes. Or they're going to keep saying no, whereas you just put them on a different drip automation, right? So it's all about that sequence. It's all about having that approach, right? Think of it like this. If you can put all of your messages right one above, so initial message first, and then the follow-up message second, and then they respond, and let's say you have a conversation via quick replies, and then you have a drip automation. You put them on a drip. Picture it in your head. Does that make sense? Does the first message align with the second message? Does the whole of both messages correlate with the whole conversation? And does the drip automation actually continue the sequence? Does the conversation make sense? Do the messages make sense? What everything that you're doing with that prospect? The sequence has to be done properly, where you're initially engaged with them, you're following up with them, whether it's through non-responders or follow-up campaigns, or it's through the drip automations. It has to make sense. Otherwise, they're going to be like, what is this guy talking about? Like, I don't want to do any business with him. I don't want to respond to this guy. Look, he's sending the same exact message over and over and over again, and there's no follow-up efforts, right? Show them the follow-up effort. Alrighty, Miss Jade Porter, take it away.
Right. Before we let you go, I just want to thank everyone for being here. I know we've been talking for a little bit over an hour, but hopefully this was valuable, this was helpful. And of course, hopefully all of you know that at any point, if you need any kind of help, you can always feel free to reach out to our team or to us individually. And we're going to be more than happy to help you schedule an individual strategy session in which we're going to discuss your strategy, going to cover your accounts, not the demo account that Jason just showed you, but actually cover your user habits, where we can tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, what can be improved, and of course, the most valuable thing, give you some tips on how to achieve a much better success with the platform you're using. So Really, it
And
was.
no, so sorry to cut you off, and
Yeah,
no, this is
go ahead.
not just one session. You can schedule as
Yeah.
many sessions as you want for as long as it takes for your account to get optimized.
Show us how much you love us. I'm just kidding. No, really, but you can even schedule those sessions bi-weekly if needed. It's not a problem at all. Until we get you on the right track so that you feel no need for everyone to check your account for a month. So you can have monthly reviews, of course, but don't limit yourself. Get all the help you can. And you can get a bunch of help here. I promise you that. So before I'm going to stop myself from talking any further. Really, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jason, for inviting me to the mastermind session. And hopefully we're going to have many more with a lot more of you joining and listening to this.
And thank you to Josh for being the main man in the back end, making sure that everything is running smoothly. Appreciate you for being here, Josh. With that being said, guys, have a blessed day. Have an amazing week. Have an amazing weekend. And let us know if you need anything. We're always here for you. Appreciate you coming. Appreciate you taking the time. Take care. Bye, guys.